Pachatyadesha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschacharya Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 87, verse 14. Shri Shrutaya Uchu Jaya Jaya Jahajam Ajita Dosha Grabita Gunam Tamasi Yat Atmana Samavaruddha Samasta Bhaga Aga Jagat Oka Samakila Shakta Vabodakate Kvachit Ajay Atmana Chacharato Nucharen Nigamaha. Oh. Shri Shrutaya Uchu, the Vedas said, Jaya Jaya, victory to you, Jahi, please defeat Ajam, eternal illusory potency of Maya, Ajita, O unconquerable one, dosha, to create discrepancies, grabita, who has assumed gunam, qualities of matter, tvam, you, asi, are, yat, because atmana, in your original status, samavaruddha, complete, samasta, in all, bhaga, opulences, agga, non-moving, jagat, moving, okasam, of those who possess material bodies, akila, of all, shakti, energies, avabodhaka, you who awaken, te, you, kavachit, sometimes, ajaya, with your material energy, atmana, and with your internal spiritual energy, cha, also, charata, engaging, anucharet, can appreciate, nigama, the Vedas. Translation of the Shruti said, victory, victory to you, O unconquerable one. By your very nature, you are perfectly full in all opulences. Therefore, please defeat the eternal power of illusion, who assumes control over the modes of nature to create difficulties for conditioned souls. You, O you who awaken all the energies of the moving and non-moving embodied beings, sometimes the Vedas can recognize you as you sport with your material and spiritual potencies. Report. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the 28 verses of the prayers of the personified Vedas represent the opinions of each of the 28 major Shrutis. These chief Upanishads and other Shrutis concern themselves with various approaches to the absolute truth, and among them those Shrutis are supreme, which emphasize pure, unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Upanishads direct our attention to the personality of Godhead by first negating what is distinct from him and then defining some of his important characteristics. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti interprets the first words of this prayer, Jaya, Jaya, to mean, please reveal your super excellence. The word Jaya is repeated out of either reverence or joy. How should I reveal my excellence, the Lord might say? The Shrutis answer by requesting him to mercifully destroy the ignorance of all living beings and attract them to his lotus feet. The Lord says, but Maya, who imposes ignorance on the jivas, is full of good qualities. Garbita Gunam, why should I oppose her? Yes, the Vedas answer, but she has taken on the three modes of nature to bewilder the conditioned souls and make them falsely identify with their material bodies. Her modes of goodness, passion, ignorance, moreover, are tainted. Dosha, Garbita, because you are not manifest in their presence. The Shrutis go on to address the Lord as Ajita, implying that only you cannot be conquered by Maya, whereas the others, like Brahma, are defeated by their own faults. The Lord responds, but what proof do you have that she cannot conquer me? The proof lies in the fact that in your original state, you have already realized the perfection of all opulences. At this point, the Lord might object that merely destroying the ignorance of the jivas will not suffice to bring them to his lotus feet, since the jiva's soul, even after its ignorance is dispelled, cannot attain the Lord without engaging in devotional service. As the Lord states in his own words, Bhaktyaham ekaya grahya, I am attainable only through devotional service. To this objection, the Shrutis reply, my Lord, O you who awaken all energies, after creating the intelligence and senses of the living entities, you inspire them to work hard and enjoy the fruits of their labor. In addition, by your mercy, you awaken their ability to pursue the progressive paths of knowledge, mystic yoga, and devotional service, allowing them to advance toward you in your aspect of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, respectively. And when Jnana, Yoga, and Bhakti mature, you empower the living beings to directly realize you in each of your three aspects. If the Lord were to ask the authoritative evidence to support this statement by the personified Vedas, they humbly reply, we ourselves are the evidence. On some occasions, such as now, the time of creation, you consort with your external Maya potency, whereas you are always present with your internal energy. It is at times such as the present, when your activity is outwardly manifest, that we, the Vedas, can recognize you in your play. Thus endowed with authority by their personal association with the Supreme Lord, the Srutis promulgate the processes of karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti as various means for the conditioned souls to employ their intelligence, senses, mind, and vitality in search of the absolute truth. In many places, the Vedas glorify the transcendental personal qualities of the Supreme. The following verses appear in Svetasvatara Upanishad, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, and Brahma Upanishad. Eko Deva Sarvabhuteshu Guda, Sarva Vyapi Sarva Bhutantara Maha Karma Dhyaksha Sarva Bhutadi Vasaha Sakshi Cheta Kevala Nirgunascha. The One Supreme Lord lives hidden inside all created beings. He pervades all matter and sits within the hearts of all living beings. As the indwelling Supersoul, he supervises their material activities. Thus, while having no material qualities himself, he is the unique witness and giver of consciousness. The Supreme's personal qualities are further described in the following quotations from the Upanishads. Ya sarvagya sa sarvavidyasya jnana maya tapa. He who is all-knowing, from whom the potency of all knowledge comes. He is the wisest of all. Mundaka Upanishad. Sarvasya Vasi Sarvasyeshana. He is the Lord and controller of everyone. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And Ya Pritavyam Tishtan Pritavya Antaro Yam Prithvi Naveda. He who resides within the earth and pervades it, whom the earth does not know. The Lord's role in creation is mentioned in many statements in the Sruti. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad states, So Kamayata Bahu Sham. He desired, I will become many. The phrase, So Kamayata, he desired, here implies that the Lord's personality is eternal, for even prior to the creation, the absolute truth experienced desire, and desire is an attribute unique to persons. The Aitareya Upanishad similarly states, Saikshata Tattejo Srajata. He saw and his power sent forth the creation. Here the word Tatteja refers to the Lord's partial expansion, Mahavishnu, who glances upon Maya and thus manifests the material creation. Or Tatteja may refer to the Lord's impersonal Brahman feature, his potency of all-pervasive eternal existence. As described in Sri Brahma Samhita, Yasya Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Kotishvaseshu Vasudadi Vibhuttibinam Te Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. In summing up this verse, Srila Swami prayers, Jaya, Jaya Jita, Jaya Aga Jangama, Vritam Ajam, Upanita, Mrisha Gunan, Nahi Bhavantam Urute Prabhavantyami, Nigama Gita Gun Arna Vata Tava. All glory to you, O unconquerable one. Please defeat the influence of your eternal Maya, who covers all moving and non-moving creatures and who rules over the modes of illusion. Without your influence, all these Vedic mantras would be powerless to sing of you as the ocean of transcendental qualities. So this is the first of the prayers of the personified Vedas, the Shrutis. So here it says, Shrutaya Uchu, the Shrutis said. So of course one could take it all the Shrutis speaking at once, but the interpretation is different Shrutis are speaking, or at least from examining the different verses, we see that there are quite different opinions expressed in some cases, or different viewpoints, or different subject matters. And obviously some belong to certain Upanishads, like there's one about the koshas, Annamaya kosha, etc. So that's obviously Taittiriya Upanishad deals with that in quite a lot of detail. So therefore our acharyas usually say that the different Upanishads are speaking because they have emphasis on different subject matters, and these different subject matters come up in the different verses. That's because the Shrutis are speaking, one would expect that they are referring to the Upanishads, which is natural, and they're referring to certain statements in the Upanishads also. Thus the acharyas usually take these verses in the context of Upanishads and start quoting many verses, as we see here in the commentary. There is quotations from Svetasvatara Upanishad, Gopaltapani Upanishad, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, and others, Mundaka Upanishad, because they have some very famous statements. Some of which, of course, directly, from what if we just read the verses themselves, glorify the Supreme Lord, as these verses do, which were quoted. Some of which can be taken as very impersonal, such as Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, etc., or Tattvamasi. So there's a controversy about what those verses mean. In any case, we have a wide variety of verses quoted in the commentaries to illustrate the statements made by the Shrutis, because ultimately here the Shrutis are not talking about Brahman at all. They're praising the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is awaking from sleep to create the universes, and the Shrutis are waking him up. So obviously they're aware of the Supreme Lord ultimately. So though they may speak in such a way to appear impersonal, ultimately they're not impersonal, because they're all glorifying the Supreme Lord ultimately. As was stated in the previous verses, the Lord is sleeping and there's no creation. Then he starts to wake up a little bit because the jivas are getting restless, and the Shrutis also understand that he should start creating the material world. So therefore they start reciting prayers to glorify him. So these are prayers of glorification. The Shruti stuti. Stuti means to glorify. So therefore they're glorifying the Lord. Now originally, the question was asked, how can the Shrutis, and other scriptures as well, in any way describe or glorify Brahman, because Brahman has no qualities. So you can't glorify something that has no qualities. And how can words, material words, express anything concerning the absolute truth? They can't even name the absolute truth because it's material words. So, but here we see the Shrutis are glorifying the Lord. So they're actually using words, and they're glorifying Supreme Lord. So that in itself, we can say, defeats the very question in one sense, because one, there is a Lord who has qualities, and second, the Shrutis themselves are glorifying here, and the Lord is accepting it. So anyway, in various verses here, then it'll also become obvious that the Lord has the capacity to empower the Shrutis to express spiritual qualities, spiritual activities, spiritual ideas, etc. So this is the first of the verses, starting out with Jaya Jaya. As the commentary says, Jaya, of course, means victory, victory to you, but often the meaning is taken on Jaya, Jayate, Jayati, etc. When we're glorifying Krishna or others, Vishnu, etc. Besides victory, Because sometimes, why would we want to say Krishna is victorious over who if he's sitting in Vrindavan? So often, Jaya means simply that he manifests highest qualities of excellence. He is situated in the highest degree of excellence. That is also a meaning of Jaya. Yeah. May you always be situated in the highest excellence, which again implies qualities of some sort, because you need qualities to be excellent. He's in the highest position, so he has certain qualities that distinguish him from other beings. Of course, this is also indicating that if we're glorifying someone, we're glorifying him in relation to others, which means that other beings also exist. So therefore, he is superior to them. So in other words, there's not only one being, Brahman. If there's only one being, Brahman, there's nothing to glorify because nothing else exists. So we can't glorify him in relation to anything. That's why you can even glorify Brahman. But here they're glorifying Krishna, and Jaya indicating he is supreme. There are other entities, they have qualities and they have positions and they have powers, but he is supreme among them. So automatically implies duality, not Advaita, not all oneness. There's varying degrees of living entities, and he is the highest of all. So, not only that, they talk about here Aja, which is Prakriti. So, according to my Vada philosophy, Prakriti is also Maya. It's illusory. Here, it's not illusory. Certainly, it's inferior, but it is also existing. And it's also Aja, no birth. It's always been there. Prakriti is eternal. So it's also indicating Prakriti is real. But this Prakriti is described as being full of faults. Dosha grabita gunam. This material world is full of faults. The Lord is much superior to that. And therefore you should defeat this inferior energy. So that is the meaning of Jahi, defeat illusion. So the Lord, of course, is eternally, he has defeated illusion. So here the context is not simply that the Lord has to continually fight against Maya, but rather that he is the request is that he remove illusion from the living entities in this world who are affected by it. So, in other words, they're applying to the Lord to his compassionate nature. You please deliver the living entities from this material world, because they cannot do so on their own. So you have to do this. You have to also involve yourself in doing this. So this also indicates the very purpose of the creation of the world. Here the Shrutis are waking up the Lord, and then the Lord will glance over material energy. He will inject the jivas into material energy, and then they'll get bodies, gross and subtle, and they'll reside on certain planets according to their karma, and they'll engage in activities of suffering and enjoyment, and they'll accrue more karma, and they'll get caught up in the cycle for the whole lifetime of Brahma. Right? So that's the Lord's creation, one of his pastimes, the pastimes with Maya. He's engaged with Maya, it says here. But then that is not the highest position, and the Lord should be compassionate to these jivas and take them out of this position in the material world. So though the Lord does inject the jivas into the material world because that is their karma, we also know that the Lord makes arrangement to deliver the jivas from the material world. So of course they don't have to state that, but they're stating that because this is one of the obvious roles of the Supreme Lord. He likes to deliver the jivas from the material world, and of course he does that in many ways. One is through the Vedas themselves. Yeah? through the Vedas, you can approach the Lord and you can get deliverance. They're not useless. They're not material words. The devotees of the Lord also are beyond the material world. They're not touched by Maya also. Process of bhakti is not touched by Maya. It's in the material world. Holy name is in the material world, not touched by Maya also. So the Lord gives plenty of opportunities to the jiva to get out of the material world, in spite of the fact that the material world looks like it's pervading everywhere. But still, within the material world, we have things which are not material, and they help the jiva get out. So we have bhakti, the holy name, and the devotees, and the avatars of the Supreme Lord. So, therefore, conquest over Maya is in reference to the jivas. So the Lord should somehow help the jivas because they're in a difficult position. So the Lord here is also addressed as Akila Shakti Avabodhaka, one who awakens all Shaktis for the moving and non-living entities. So we have the material Shaktis, of course, that operate. We have there's so many descriptions of how a universal form is created, made out of material elements and material senses and material sense devatas. And these apply to the individual jivas also. They get a body, subtle body and gross body, with gross senses, subtle senses, sense devatas and sense objects. And then they can use that to enjoy in the material world or suffer in the material world. So that's one Shakti of the Lord operating, so they can operate within the material world. They can enjoy. But then the other Shakti is there, of course, the spiritual Shakti, Shakti of Bhakti, etc., which will deliver them from the material world. So, but Lord is in charge of all these Shaktis. Generally, He does not interfere with the material Shaktis because they're operating according to the law of karma. So then the Lord is witness as Paramatma. However, the Lord does assist, particularly when the jiva becomes a devotee. And then the Lord awakens very nicely the bhakti shakti. It grows and grows and grows until it becomes prema, until it becomes more powerful than the Supreme Lord. And Supreme Lord is controlled by prema of the devotee. So the Lord gives His own Shakti to the devotee, and then the Lord is controlled by that Shakti even. So Lord is very merciful, but according to qualification, then He puts jivas in certain positions in this material world, and He responds to them in different ways. So we shouldn't think that the Lord is indifferent to the jivas, but He's responding to them in different ways. However, if we're fortunate to take to the process of bhakti, then the degree with which the Lord interacts with the devotee becomes very profound, and we can say unpredictable even. He will do extraordinary things for the devotee and show extraordinary mercy to the devotees that He does not show to others. Yeah? So that is a great display of His Shakti. So His spiritual Shakti operates in relation to His devotees in a very extraordinary, astonishing way. And for the others, it acts in a very predictable way in the material world. For the devotees, it acts very nicely. So therefore, when the Shrutis are here addressing the Lord, you're the awakener of the energies of the moving and non-moving entities. Yeah, He does so according to their qualification. So, the Vedas observe the Supreme Lord, and of course the purpose of the Vedas is to reveal the Lord in some way or the other. So they can reveal Him in His relationship with Maya and the living entities under illusion. They can also reveal Him in relation to the spiritual world and the Lord in the spiritual world. So we have these two topics that are discussed in Upanishads. They describe the jiva in bondage, in wandering within karma, etc., rising by punyas and falling by papa into hell, etc. That's one topic. Another, of course, is jiva in the spiritual world, the Lord in the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, free of all hunger, suffering, birth, death, old age, etc. The Lord enjoying and playing in the spiritual world. These things are also described. And then the practical process of delivering the jiva from the material world. That is also described in the Vedic literatures. So they describe all aspects, material, spiritual world, and the process of getting the jiva out of the material world so that he can attain, manifest his full potential of bliss. So that process takes different forms as described in the purport. There is karma expressed, not so much in the Upanishads, more in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and then we get Upanishads, we get more jnana and bhakti expressed, and some Astanga Yoga also. So all of these are processes mentioned in the Vedas for jivas of different qualifications. But ultimately, in order to get to the goal, spiritual world, then they have to take through the process of devotion and recognize the Supreme Lord. So all the Shrutis realize this, but some are empowered or given the task of just glorifying the lower processes. So karma yoga, jnana yoga, and astanga yoga. And others are glorifying, they're entitled to glorify bhakti yoga. So we have Upanishads speaking on all aspects, but they understand also the ultimate thing is to realize the Supreme Lord, and that's why they're glorifying him here in these verses.
Modern scholars, what they teach in the college and all, they think Vedic literature is written down by rishis and very unsystematic, but we know it is Apaurushiya, Lord, but there is no any time when it was created. My question is that whether the Vedas existed along with the Lord, or it emanated from the Lord's mouth, or if it's emanating from the Lord's mouth, then how the Lord himself will tell you, glorify me?
Well, yes, we find that the Vedas come out of the higher Griva's mouth, and we find that the Gayatri mantra is imparted from Brahma's flute, or from Krishna's flute to Brahma in this day of Brahma or whatever. So in one sense, yes, but actually the Vedas are eternal, just as we can say Prakriti is eternal and it's manifests and sometimes disappears. So the Vedas also within the material world manifest in certain ways through Hayagriva or out of Brahma's mouth or whatever like that. But ultimately it's always it's eternal sound, and it's always in the same form, which is not so for the Smritis, because the Smritis are manifested daily by Veda Vyas and others, and they're changeable. But the Vedas are not changeable. They're always the same words in the same position. Of course, we can probably lost part of the Vedas also, so it's not all there for us, but nevertheless, then when they manifest in a complete form, then they're exactly as they were in the previous day of Brahma, the previous day of Brahma, previous day of Brahma, previous universe, etc. So in that sense, they're eternal, though they may manifest in different ways, like even Krishna appears from Vasudeva and Devaki, etc. So eternal, but they manifest in the material world at certain points in time. So, of course, modern historians and Indologists have their, let's say, theories about age of the Vedas, age of Sanskrit language, Aryan language before that, or the Indic, pro-Indic language, Aryan language, or Indic language, or something like that, previous to Sanskrit. They have all sorts of theories in linguistics about this. The people in the Central Asia or somewhere like that. That's where the original language came from, and then it came down into India and turned into Sanskrit eventually, something like that. That's one theory at least. Anyway, there's different theories about this. This is historical theories of the modern world. But that's all based upon our modern speculation, because we don't know. We can only study language and then study roots and study grammar and see similarities and trace it back to this and to that and whatever. So we can trace things back, but we could be subject to speculation there also. We don't know. Similarly, the whole history of India, you look in your history textbooks, it says the Indians came from somewhere else, and then they settled in India, and they did this, they did that at a certain point in time like that. And, so there's theories, but nobody really knows. Of course, now they have genetics, and they can trace back different places and see and then maybe the Australian Aborigines are related to the Indians, or the Indians are related to the Siberians. We don't know, nothing like that. But then genetically they may be related. That may be true also, because, the culture spread everywhere. But it's all, we don't really know. So this is a modern technique of, analyzing things according to our time scale and what we perceive as history, etc. But it's not the only way of doing it. So therefore we see the Bhagavatam talks about the whole day of Brahma, which goes on for back to before the dinosaur age or whatever, according where there are no human beings. So it's a completely different type of history that's taking place here in the Bhagavatam. So anyway, we take it as eternal. So even if somebody can definitely prove that, they recorded the Vedas at a certain date 5,000 years ago or something like that, we have no problem with that in one sense, because yes, Vedas did about 5,000 years ago divide the Vedas up and give them to the rishis, and then they passed them down in parampara since that time. So there is a 5,000 year mark in some sense there of preservation of the Vedas. Again, we're speaking from conditional existence, and we're thinking about our particular material bodies in this, and we're talking about our material time and our material space. But obviously, even in the material world, on higher levels, it's not the same. It's not the same space. It's not the same time. If you get into the subtle body. So if you get to the spirit soul, then that's beyond time. If you go to the spiritual world, it's beyond time, it's beyond space. So, and then the whole world looks completely different. So we're speaking and analyzing things from a conditioned point of view. So obviously, there is some fault and some limitation in how we analyze things.
In the Vedic hymns, they are chanted in a particular way, like swaras, meter.
Yeah.
That does apply even for the Bhagavatam thing? Or
no, not for Bhagavatam.
Only for Vedic.
Yeah, it's only for the
if
Vedas
you see North
themselves.
India, when they chant, it looks different. In South Indians, chant in different way.
Well, there's different sakas of the Vedas. We see that different rishis were empowered by Veda Vyas to carry on the Vedas, and they start dividing up and subdividing up, and then they have their own tradition of chanting. So we have different styles of chanting also. And each Veda also is chanted differently. The Sam Veda has 7 svaras, and the Rig and Yajur only have 3 svaras. So different ways in which they chant the Vedas.
We have in Bhagavatam 18,000 verses, Gita 700. Is there any number of fixed verses in the 4 Vedas? Atharva Vedas contains...
I don't know. I don't know if they've analyzed that at all.
In the previous verse, Sanandana clearly says that the Vedas woke up the Lord by singing his praises, which implies that the Vedas were there even before Mahavishnu woke up from that part.
Well, as Shaktis of the Lord, they can be present at certain times. So, in other words, we understand that they're not material entities. So therefore, what's wrong with them existing before the creation of the material world, which is all gross? And it's also said that the Lord was in his yoga nidra is with his Shaktis also. So therefore, the Shaktis are eternal, and they're also spiritual Shaktis, not material Shaktis. So there's no problem that they're existing before the creation of the universe.
And here in this verse, Ajam, the word used says that eternal energy of the Maya, illusory energy of Maya. That means that illusory energy is also somewhat spiritual, and it is there in the spiritual world also.
No.
This same
Prakriti is Maya, material energy, and it's eternal. As explained Prabhupada explains the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 things discussed in scripture and Bhagavad Gita, etc. And there's Prakriti, which is eternal, jivas, who are eternal, Supreme Lord, who is eternal, karma, which is no beginning but can have an end. What else we have? Time, which is eternal also. So we have so many eternals there, but they're not all spiritual. So time is part of the material world, and Prakriti is part of the material world. That's the Bahiranga Shakti. Jiva is in between, Tatastha Shakti. And then we have Supreme Lord, and of course his internal energy, their spiritual world.
Which is the energy which puts devotees in illusion when the leelas are conducted in the spiritual world?
Oh, well, that's the internal energy of the Lord. Yoga Maya, which is part of the internal energy. So it's not ignorance in the normal sense, it's spiritual ignorance in the sense that in the spiritual world they're ignorant of certain things. So that's Yoga Maya. It's part of the internal Shakti of the Lord, not the external Shakti.
Maharaj, how is material nature with doshas eternal?
How is
It
it?
says here it's got faults, full of illusion and fault.
Yeah.
Material nature.
Yeah.
And the faults and illusion are also eternal?
Well, we can say fault in one sense. From the Lord's point of view, it's not a fault, it's perfect.
How?
Because the Lord makes Prakriti, which is unconscious, inert, can't do anything on its own, it's dependent, it gives rise to ignorance in the jiva, violence, and all sorts of bad qualities, all due to Prakriti, So in that sense, bad qualities. From the Lord's point of view, it all has a purpose, of course, to educate the jiva. So in that sense, it's perfect. And it's all purnam, like one purnam. But from the jiva's point of view, it is dosha because ignorance is not good. It's darkness, tamagun, not good. Prakriti is completely unconscious. And spiritual world is fully chit. Material world is achit. So that's faulty in one sense, from jiva's point of view, because he falls into illusions affected by karma, goes on birth after birth like this. So in that sense, it has fault.
Is anything that is eternal that's mentioned in the scriptures
Yeah.
is also beautiful, truth, etc., etc. But this idea of Prakriti being eternal and having doshas, it makes it a little different from what normally it is.
Well, we can say that when Prakriti is in its inner state, then we cannot say it has faults because nothing is manifested. No qualities at all manifest. You can't even perceive it. And then when when time operates and Mahavishnu glances and injects the jivas, then we see Mahatattva coming out, mind coming out, Ahankara coming out. So it starts out in a very even the gunas are not manifest in Prakriti when it's sleeping. And then when Mahavishnu glances, it turns sattvic and Mahatattva manifests. Then it goes down into Rajasic state called Sutra state. Then it goes into Tamasic state called Ahankara. So we get the three gunas manifesting out of that sleeping state of Prakriti. So when it's in a sleeping state, it's nirguna. Nothing is manifest, very neutral at that stage. Then it starts operating, but only because of the Lord's will. So it's not independent, it's dependent on the Lord. And then it manifests the whole material world, etc. But at one stage, no quality also. In that sense, it's also okay. Not full of faults at that point. Well, then the jivas start having desires to enjoy. That's the fault. So in response to that, then the Lord manifests Prakriti and all the things come out, and the jivas get into Prakriti and start enjoying, and then they end up with more karmas. And we can attribute that to the Lord's fault. He did that, but actually it's the jiva's fault because he has the desires to enjoy independently.
It becomes a vicious cycle. The desire, it comes out of one experience. Otherwise, jiva cannot have some sort of desire.
Yeah, from his previous experiences, then he develops. He may not change the desire. He may change the desire due to experience. And he has new desires, new experiences, new desires. And this is how you go on in the mind, with the mind and the thing, and intelligence and intellect and ahankara. And this pushes you into another birth. So, yeah, it's difficult to get out. Mama maya duratya, you cannot get out of the material world on your own. So that's why you need the avabodhaka shakti of the Lord. Yeah, the Lord has to do something, otherwise we can't get out.
And still the jiva, with the knowledge what is available at its disposal, it cannot make a right decision unless some guidance like the guru is not there.
Well, we have all sorts of gurus on different levels. So in karma yoga, you got your family, you got your traditions, you got the king, and they're following dharma. So, and then you have the Brahmin priest, and so they give you instruction, this is sin, this is not sin, etc. So you get some education that way. The human being, animals cannot do so. So we get elementary instructions on Dharma through Karma Yoga. And then we get, as we go higher and higher, then we get spiritual instructions also.
Material world, a child learns the mother tongue from his mother and go to school. We all learn by some teacher. Now the question is, where does the jiva get the desire? Where does it learn from? Is it self, the desire is already there? Or you mentioned that jiva's desire is there. Unless it learns from somewhere, where the desires come.
Well, we can have jivas that don't learn also. You can take a child without, and the parents don't teach him anything. He just wanders around and he's just
No,
less
you mean that the
educated,
jiva
less
is like
trained.
empty, like an empty hard disk which has no any files. Then rather the files come.
No, obviously, the jiva is continuing from a previous lifetime where he had desires and he had unfulfilled
First
desires,
desire come.
and he
Question
fulfilled
comes.
some desires, and then he had new experiences. So that's stuck in his subtle body, and it pushes him to the next subtle body. So what happened in the beginning, when he wakes up from sleep from Brahma, previous universes' desires, all those things which were in him in a previous universe, they get attached to him again in a subtle body, and then he starts up with that. And then he continues from that point onwards, accruing new experiences, and they get stored in a subtle body, new desires like that.
What about the first universe?
No first universe. Mahavishnu is always there. And he puts them in, and he expels the universes again and again and again and again.
It means the jiva is called eternal. That's it. That's the reason it's called eternal.
Well, he's also eternal in the spiritual world, but material world, no beginning, but he can't end existence in the material world and go to spiritual world through bhakti.
We always blame children that they get bad habits by association. So jivas have so many other evil thoughts and other, somewhere or other you should have got some information.
Well,
which it has.
yeah. Well, the jiva's not alone in the material world. We're born, and then we have association. Due to karma, you're stuck in a certain family, so that's your immediate association. So they have great influence on you. But then later you grow up, then you have other influences. So then you can start changing your activities slightly from what your parents taught you, like that. But then you don't change too much generally. So it's very, very slow progress life after life because of that ability to change. And if we don't have good instructions, of course, from spiritual knowledge, then it becomes even more difficult. So that's why at least the Varnashram system is, if it's intact, then there is some guarantee of gradual evolvement, because each lifetime you get some sort of restriction on things, and this is sin, this is punya, etc. You get some sort of limited knowledge in the lower gunas, and then you get more knowledge in the upper gunas when you learn spiritual knowledge. So there is some sort of guarantee there of some regular progress, where in other systems there may not be, other social systems.
And most of the Vedic mantras are used in sacrifices. When they chant the Homa, they chant the Vedic hymns.
Yeah.
They're not, they don't teach Vedas. Most of the seen, they'll be chanting the mantras and pouring the oblations in the fire.
Well, that's one use. One is used for sacrifice, particularly the Yajurveda mantras. Like Samveda is, its main purpose is recitation only, they singing it, so it's for performance. And then Rigveda, I think, is for recitations. So different Vedas have different functions also.
The ignorance of the jiva reside? Is it because when the jiva is free of the subtle and the gross bodies inside Mahavishnu's body, then why does it get restless at all? It is an association of the Lord. It should get purified, isn't it?
Again, because he's only advanced to a certain state, maybe he's animal, plant, or human being, then the Lord keeps him in that state. He doesn't advance him beyond that state. It's only a rest period, like you sleep, and then you wake up and you're back in your same body again. So when the Lord decides to create the universe, again, their previous karmas and impressions, etc., stick to the jiva again, and then he starts off again. When he's sleeping, not active. When he wakes up and gets into the material, then they start activating again, just as if you're waking up from sleep and you had your previous day's experiences and all that sort of stuff behind you.
But the ignorance, where does it reside?
It's not really stated, but I suppose it's in a potential form, and then it just sticks to the jiva again when he wakes up.
Lord's body is Suddha completely pure. And how can something get impure, or an impure can be touching the Lord's body?
They don't touch
They
him.
don't. They emerge
Even
in
if
the
they're
body.
inside him, he doesn't get touched by it. Like the Lord is in everybody anyway, is Paramatma. But everybody's not spiritual because Paramatma's there. They still got their ignorance there. He's within the jiva, and still the jiva's ignorant. The Paramatma is the soul of the soul within the jiva himself, and the jiva is doing all material activities, and the Lord is there, but he doesn't purify him.
Which means in material world, the matter is more powerful than the jiva?
Well, for the jiva in ignorance, it overpowers him. For the jiva in knowledge, then it doesn't affect him. So the jiva is like tatashta, he can be influenced, but not necessarily. He can go the opposite direction also.